All right, welcome guys to the Coin Vigilante show today. So today is a very exciting day because we have a special guest. We have Colin Miles joining us from Zilliqa. Now, Zilliqa is a project in the crypto space that claims to be the world's first public blockchain relying on sharding, and that allows high throughput and many transactions per second. So, Colin, it's a pleasure to have you. And without further ado, Colin, thanks for joining the show today.
I appreciate it. We like to spread the message about Zilliqa far and wide. I think a lot of people have been asking us, especially about the USA. So obviously, North America is a key focus for us this year.
Perfect. So, before we get into crypto, Bitcoin, and talking a little bit about your project, could you give the audience just a little bit of your background of where you come from, maybe some work experience that you've had, and then maybe we'll jump into that later.
Yeah, it's quite a long CV. I think I stretch back a few decades, and it's starting to show. But I would say, I'm in a very exciting moment in the blockchain era. But previously, I was involved in the dot-com era. So just about the time that Amazon was founded in 93, 94, we were involved in Singapore creating e-commerce sites and getting all up with dot-com initiatives and I just loved the dot-com buzz, and we had a lot of fun for many years, actually, culminating in me building an online music store, which we were trying to do something similar to the online music CD music .com, for example. So we had a lot of fun there, but of course everything flamed out in 2001, pretty much. The dot-com bust took us down. But at that time, we'd already started moving into the mobile space. So anything mobile and interactive was really cool. We did a few projects early on with a lot of the media companies, especially mass participation TV interaction, such as voting, like American Idol. But we had Singapore Idol, for example, and we also worked on the Got Talent franchise. We worked with the SBN and all these guys, just providing mobile services in any part of the business that they were interested in putting into the mobile domain. So that was my mobile era. That one did culminate in a successful exit and an M&A, which happened in 2012. At which point I managed to walk into a conference which had a Bitcoin ATM featured on the floor. And so in 2013, I bought my first piece of Bitcoin, and it was only a piece, unfortunately, not a whole one, for about $350, I think it was then. So I got a piece of paper with a QR code on it, and was scratching my head kind of as to what to do with it. And the guy said, "Oh, you got to go online and create a wallet." And so really, as green as you like, I had to go and create my own wallet and then get the Bitcoin into that wallet. And I kind of left it for a couple of years. And when I went back to it, my $50 was like 450. And I thought, wow, this is quite a cool way
Yeah.
to grow your money. I may not fully understand it, but it's certainly something. And yeah, it was a great introduction to the blockchain era. At which point I started to study up. I talked to people in the industry. I actually saw on Facebook a post I did on the Singapore blockchain group in 2014 saying, "Hey, wow, look at Bitcoin, it's going great." Right? So I'm not sure what the price was. It was still pretty low, but
Right.
yeah, I stretched back quite a long way in Bitcoin, and then fast forward, did a few other things, got involved in a blockchain company working with identity, and then was asked if I might want to join Zilliqa as a marketing guy a year ago, literally a year ago, and yeah, I celebrated my first anniversary. Clearly, we've grown a bit in that year, but we've
Yeah.
got a lot more to do. A lot more to do.
Gotcha. Well, that's a good intro. So, you talk about the dot-com bubble and how you were, in that industry when it was first rising and ending, right? So, would you say, like, if you had to compare a little bit of the crypto environment to the dot-com bubble, in my mind, I see some similarities between the two. Now, obviously, I did not live the dot-com bubble. It was just I was basically a kid. So, but in my mind, if I look at the numbers and exponential growth, and when we talk about network effects, right? where do you see crypto standing? Does it even compare, or is there like some similarities to where we're approaching maybe the beginning or medium or end of the cycle? Like, how do you see Bitcoin compared to and crypto compared to the dot-com bubble?
I do like the comparison, and I think quite a lot of industry observers have drawn the parallels between the internet timeline and the Bitcoin timeline. So effectively, calling Bitcoin the internet money, the internet of money is quite a nice term for me to use to help people understand the subset that Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies equate to. So effectively, if I was going to pitch it, we have to look at the numbers of people online. So it was going in the tens of millions in the 90s to the hundreds of millions in the noughties, and eventually the billions in just soon after the Facebook push, around about 2010. So in terms of the growth of the internet and the stage we would compare the internet of money, we're still really early. I couldn't give an exact timeline fix, but I would say we're still in the still in the late 90s, early noughties.
Okay, yeah, that's kind of how I picture cryptocurrencies. I mean, to me, it's just a new technological advancement. Whether you talk about blockchain A, B, C, or D, I think that overall, we're entering a pretty cool stage in technology. And yeah, a lot of people get caught up in just like one project, two project. I think there's a lot of opportunity out there, not only to for financial gain, but to participate in this new movement, which is very cool. And I always try to see that and compare it to the dot-com bubble because a lot of companies, great companies, were built in that time. Okay, so now I have a lot of people in the audience that literally, quite literally, just got into Bitcoin cryptocurrencies a week ago, a month ago. I have my in-laws that are listening, right? So it's like a bunch of stuff and information that just keeps coming in. And every time people ask me, well, what should I buy or where should I do research or, all that. If you could, just give a very simple definition of what Zilliqa is and what problems does it solve, I think that would be great for our audience.
Yeah, well, we do have a tagline on high performance, highly scalable, highly secure blockchain. But more specifically, we were looking at the challenges faced by Ethereum because as a blockchain with a smart contract layer, it was suffering from the inability to scale. It did more than the Bitcoin blockchain, but by the same token, it invited a lot more complexity and difficulty in scaling. So around about 2000, actually starting 2015, but mostly 2017, a team from NUS decided to put together an academic research paper into finding out how a blockchain with smart contracts could scale significantly faster than Ethereum, for example. So there was kind of precedence in the academic world for analyzing sharding, which is a way of dividing up the blockchain so things can happen simultaneously. And it was a white paper which was well received and obviously got funding and incubated out of National University of Singapore. And then that became Zilliqa Research Private Limited, which launched the official white paper and logic behind the Zilliqa blockchain. So that's the short story. There to solve a problem, like all the best businesses, and certainly has proven in the last 2 years that it can do that and scale dramatically.
Okay. So now, for example, if I look at Ethereum, I'm not a big tech guy, but I try to understand at least a broad picture of things. If I look at Ethereum, for example, to me, Ethereum is like a machine or environment that allows decentralized finance applications to grow. And so, it's true because, it literally, the network is getting clogged because so many people are using Ethereum and it's not scalable on top of that. I mean, for Christ's sakes, I went to, where was it? Uniswap for the first time. I mean, literally, first time, I think 2 weeks ago. And I'm like, man, I bought a token in 2017 that I completely forgot about. It actually is probably down about 95% since then. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna trade it now. There's no liquidity, or I can't do it through a US exchange. So I'm gonna see if I don't know, I'm gonna test the waters with Uniswap. Okay, well, I deposited, 300. I connected $300 worth of that token with my wallet into that. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna swap it for something else. Oh, wait a minute, $80 fee. Well, I can't believe that, right? And so I cannot imagine how people are actually just trading like that when the fees are just insanely high, just to make a $300 transaction or $400 swap. And so, in my mind, when I look at that, I think of Zilliqa. Okay, well, if I listen to you and if the research that I do is correct, then Zilliqa should be offering that ability to remove those fees because you guys have a scalable project. So, in terms of DeFi applications, though, are you guys looking into, creating that sort of environment like Ethereum, where a lot of decentralized finance is joining Zilliqa as well, on top of the scalability that you guys have?
Yeah, we've had a big push into DeFi in the recent months. Obviously, we have our own DEX, ZilSwap, which is certainly cost effective. We keep our transaction fees incredibly low, so you're talking about tens of cents rather than tens of dollars. That's a very important factor in scaling the platform. Uh, Third parties are building their dApps and are helping. You can hear the Singapore Air Force flying over me. But you have you have a growth in dApps now. People looking to build onto the Zilliqa blockchain and also launch their own tokens, which they can do on the ZilSwap DEX quite quickly. So as long as they have a value, a utility, and something which people want, they can create a token very quickly. It's fully decentralized, and then the market will decide what the value is and whether it is worth trading.
And so, a lot of people, again, listening, don't even have a clue what decentralized finance is or dApps are. So, what if you could explain to them, just give them like a 30-second pitch? What is DeFi, and what do these decentralized applications offer or do that are, maybe a bit different than the current traditional system that we have for finance?
Yeah, so we have our own overarching positioning for this. We inhabit a world of open finance, so we're very keen on working in the open finance sector. So that is something which can correlate and work with existing financial services institutions and help them improve their liquidity or tokenize securities or do things that bankers should be doing with technology in a much more efficient way on the blockchain. So open finance opens up the whole world of financial services to a wide range of institutions and people. Decentralized finance is, in theory, almost completely a non-interventionist platform. So whoever creates a dApp, whoever creates an exchange, whoever creates a service does so using the various tools of consensus and tokenization and trading and liquidity swapping to enable the community that supports that project or wishes to trade in that project to do it completely autonomously. And
Hmm.
there's a lot of language describing decentralized autonomous organizations or autonomous market makers. There's a lot of language which describes decentralization, but effectively there should be no human intervention or middleman involved in any part of the transaction on a DeFi service. So open finance is partially controlled, and decentralized finance should be completely open and managed by consensus.
Got it. Okay, yeah, I think that's a better explanation than I could give. Okay, so I understand that. So we got DeFi going on through Zilliqa. Now, you talk about tokenization of security. So I was reading an article I came across, I don't know where, on Twitter, I think, and it talks about Zilliqa tokenizing a premium like whiskey collection. And I
Yeah.
don't know in what country that was. And I thought, okay, huh, interesting. Well, I like whiskey, and they're tokenizing that. So when I was reading tokenizing whiskey, are you guys actually saying like explain that process to me because that confuses me a bit. And you talk about tokenizing securities, but you can also tokenize whiskey. So what's that all about?
Yeah, this is entering into the world of luxury and premium investment. So if we look at the industry as a whole, particularly for whiskey, premium whiskey has increased in value something like 500% in the last 5 years or 10 years. So there are investors specifically identifying strong vintage whiskey from the right distilleries and investing in that whiskey and then being able to trade that investment going forward and make a profit. So there is quite a strong whiskey investment community. Now, if you look at the way whiskey is made and legitimately gets the official approval from the Scottish authorities, you have a cask, and in that cask you have the potential to issue a certain number of bottles of whiskey. So some of these casks are really quite old, 30 years or something like that, and there's a timeline for distributing that whiskey. So we have an opportunity here to take a cask, which costs, let's say, $1 million, for example, one cask, X number of bottles. You can't be absolutely sure which number, but a certain amount is guaranteed. And then people can now own a piece of that cask. One bottle, for example, is one token, which is coming from that cask. So the cask is turned into something which is owned in fractions. And that's why they call it fractional ownership. So it's also an asset. So it's a physical asset. So people call it an asset-backed security. ABS has a very strong tradition in securities finance for asset-backed securities. So in the terms of whiskey, the cask becomes your asset-backed security, and then it is sold in pieces to those people who wish to own a bottle and trade that bottle. There is a timeline on it, so roughly say 2 to 3 years before it gets broken down into those bottles. And at that point, that's when either you've traded out your token or you become the proud owner of one bottle of vintage whiskey.
So you
So
can so got it. So you can redeem it is what you're saying at some
yeah,
point. Got it.
either you trade it or you redeem it.
Or
So
okay.
obviously there are people who like to have a $10,000 bottle of whiskey. They're high net worth individuals. They recognize the quality from Port Ellen, for example, one of the distilleries, which is quite famous in the Scottish whiskey industry. So, you know, it's got a premium value, and those are the most expensive traded whiskey tokens on the Zilliqa blockchain through the HTX at the moment. So, fractional ownership of a whiskey cask is quite compelling for people who don't want to spend $1 million on one cask.
See that and that's so interesting because I mean right now so Zilliqa did this with a luxury basically drink with whiskey, right?
Hmm.
So but if you look at the big picture, you know what amazes me about this as I try to understand it a bit more is that basically you can tokenize real estate, you can tokenize securities, you can tokenize bonds and all of this to where maybe in the future you might be able to buy a fraction of an investment in real estate or something like that. I don't know if that's kind of like where this whole industry is heading, but the fact that you can tokenize something, and in short, that means basically converting rights or a unit of asset ownership into a digital token, right? And put it in a blockchain. I think in my mind that is huge because not only is it on a blockchain to where you can verify and know that you have the complete and full rights to it. On top of that, it's transparent, right? And I think, in my opinion, I think there's a lot of iffy and kind of like a gray area in the current finance system where you actually don't know if you do actually have the full ownership for the stock that you own or for whatever that you own. And I think that this is huge because not only is it, like you said, fractional ownership to where maybe the little guy, this might give an extra step up for the little guy to be able to invest in some of these things as they're able to, you know, buy into very expensive investments if it's fractional, right? Now, I don't know if at first it's going to be you have to be a certain investor to be able to do this, but to me it's kind of like groundbreaking technology.
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, you have to be an accredited investor. That's high net worth individuals generally earning, I think, over $300,000 a year or having a million or 2 million in assets. So they prove that they can make a financial decision without too much guidance. So in Singapore, we have what is known as a sandbox, which is the regulated place that the Monetary Authority of Singapore puts all of these groundbreaking blockchain technologies and securitization platforms. So there's a safe place for those to be monitored and regulated. But I think going forward, the secondary market will take off. So once, for example, Singapore is satisfied with the way this works, then those tokens which you own, you will be able to sell them on the open market or an open exchange. So that will definitely come down the pipe. It may not be this year, but that's where the market is headed. And I like to call it democratic capitalism, right? So everyone gets a chance to be involved in the movement and ownership of capital in different ways. And it's quite a powerful testament to what the blockchain can do.
Exactly. Okay, gotcha. So, okay, so now moving on to, I think you did an AMA, where you talked about Zilliqa and stuff like that, and the roadmap that's coming up for Zilliqa. So, I got a few things that I have been catching from a little bit of research that I've done. So there is something happening with Poly Network to where you guys have a partnership. And what does that partnership do? Does that basically allow you, the Zilliqa blockchain, to bridge into Ethereum to where whatever decentralized apps they have, they can be traded or something through Zilliqa?
Yeah, so this has been a long running project. It's a very important project. We call it the ZIL-ETH bridge. And effectively, there are three partners in this. Poly Network is providing the raw connectivity and transfer from the Ethereum network. Switch.io is our partner building the UI, UX, the interface, and helping us with the logic to trade over the assets. And of course, we're providing the Zilliqa blockchain and the integrations of Zilliqa to enable that to be done as smoothly as possible. There's a timeline which we are still working towards to try and get this done in Q2. It's quite a complex project. There are multiple moving parts, but there are probably three great benefits. So the first one is obviously being able to move ETH assets from Ethereum to Zilliqa. It's a very important part of the logic, and it unlocks the entire Ethereum ecosystem for Zilliqa. The second part is we are also running a recovery for interim ZIL tokens, which we kind of closed a while back for the swap, but there's still roughly 1% of people who had ZIL hiding in ledgers or had lost it
Yeah.
for a long time. And so the bridge will enable us to swap, or self-service style, enable holders to swap their interim ZIL ERC20 to mainnet ZIL. So that solves a big problem for those guys who thought they'd lost their ZIL forever.
Okay.
So that's quite cool. Um, and then we have the opportunity to build out, obviously, our own ecosystems, which enable us to build DeFi back into Ethereum, which is quite cool for us.
Correct. Okay, gotcha. And so when you talk about, so you guys are located in Singapore, do you guys have any particular plans of maybe adding Zilliqa to maybe US based exchanges, or any particular plan that you guys have to start targeting the North American area a bit more?
Yeah, we've talked to this, and of course, a lot of people have asked about it in the AMA, which was something we tried to address. We have focused quite a lot on Asia historically because we were obviously launched in Singapore and work in the ASEAN open finance arena. But we have a huge number of supporters in the USA and a large following in Europe. And when we do certain campaigns, for example, at least 50% of the people interacting with those campaigns are based in America. So
Oh,
it's very important that we start to push out towards America. There are key stepping stones for that. The exchange is absolutely crucial. I mean, we can name all the famous ones that we're not on. Currently, we are on Binance US and Uphold, so that's our initial starting point. But of course, we're just talking with a range of other exchanges to try and get some further exposure. I think you know all the famous names: Kraken, Gemini, Voyager, Coinbase, all of these
Right.
guys. It's very important that we get live with at least one of them as soon as possible, because it helps with the story and the narrative, and helps the access for um, native American token holders. So we feel it's a very important adjunct to what we're doing now, is reaching out to projects in the USA. So there's a huge amount of projects that we're quite excited about, and we've actually done a deal with a very well-known project in the US, which will be launching their token to the Zilliqa blockchain fairly soon. So at that point, I think everyone in the US will know about us.
Gotcha. Okay. And so, when we look at Zilliqa, see, I'm not a firm believer that um maximalism is basically the way to go. I mean, you look at, Bitcoin maximalists, they say, well, Bitcoin's the only thing, everything else is absolute trash, right? That's kind of like the message I get from them.
Mm.
Yes, Bitcoin is basically king. However, how do you see yourself, because maybe Zilliqa is basically, in my eyes, a competitor to Ethereum and maybe other, distributed ledger, public blockchain. So, how do you see Zilliqa performing with Ethereum? Do you see yourselves coexisting, or do you see yourself getting to a point where only one is going to thrive? To me, I don't think so. I think it's a thing where we coexist. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a big strategic question, and we've been looking at interoperability for 2021 as a major thrust for the industry. There will be no blockchain to rule them all. There will be no Ethereum killers. There will be a multitude of blockchains servicing different segments of the DeFi economy. And of course, we all have our favorites, and people are involved in different projects which they like to cheer about. But ultimately, interoperability will help us raise the market to more people. So as the internet became more ubiquitous, people didn't really worry about which internet provider they were on. They didn't even really know which internet provider they were using. It's just the backbone which everyone gets their content and services through. Of course, they have a specific gateway in some cases, but the packets themselves, no one knows where they're going. So
Right.
we think the blockchain, the Internet of Money, is going to be similar. So interoperability is really key, and we're open to multi-chain projects as well, because sometimes the sheer load of transactions is so great you literally can't put them all into one chain, right? So
Right.
I think that we have, obviously, Poly Network is interesting because they're across multiple chains. Thor chain is very interesting because they're across multiple chains. Cardia chain is across multiple chains. So we're all kind of toying with this interoperability scenario and picking selectively the best partners to enable us to create this seamless Internet of Money. So that's quite important as a strategy. And there's a project which I'm very interested in called the Human Token Project. It's out of California, actually, which is supporting this H capture service. So you go to a web page, you get a capture, and then you click through that, and that data is used by this company, and people are rewarded for being involved in that. So they've created their human token. It's on Ethereum, but they are partnering with multiple chains. So the first one is Polkadot, second one is Solana, third one is Zilliqa. So we are happy to join projects where the sheer scale of transactions that they have is so great that they do need to spread it around uh,
Right.
multiple platforms. So this is how we build a much bigger industry and a much bigger adoption rate, by partnering and working with other networks.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. So, now leaving Zilliqa and kind of like the crypto space aside a bit. So, what are your thoughts right now from the experience you have about the economy and, where we're currently standing? I mean, as we are, seeing the current environment, I mean, I think from the research I've done, if the $2 trillion stimulus passes, basically the United States has printed about 30 to 40% of all US dollars in its existence. So, do you see that as a bit worrisome? What are your thoughts on the economy? What are your thoughts on this printing happening through the Federal Reserve and every government out there, really?
Well, it certainly became a meme the first time the rescue package came out, and people were, giving it the old Fed machine, going, "Brr." This one was quite funny. This meme, just constantly printing out paper,
Right.
and it's something which Satoshi in the white paper itself, the original white paper, talked to. Banks being bailed out, governments printing money. I mean, how can we create an alternate way of sharing value, creating value, sharing value, exchanging value, so that people were protected from this kind of fiat chaos and devaluation of assets, which can be quite chronic in hyperinflation and all these kind of issues. So we get the economic theory behind it. We totally understand the way that governments work and how they have to balance their books in this format. Um, we're hoping this is the last time it ever has to take place. I think as
Yeah.
as humankind, it just seems completely beyond any kind of rational explanation at this stage. What is actually backing up this paper? Okay, good question. It's really hard to say that this promise can be kept forever by the federal bank, right?
Right.
So we have to look at alternative mechanisms, alternative ways to unlock this format for human commercial interaction. And one of the interesting things is the move towards central bank digital currencies, because central bank digital currencies, in theory, can be programmable. So you have
Yeah.
programmable money, and that means that depending on the nature of the money supply in an economy, you could theoretically program the amount of digital currency to match the requirements, use the levers that bankers normally use to change money flow. So it's an interesting prospect. I think crypto does stand out and stand up as long as everyone accepts that it has this value, provable value, and is prepared to exchange on that basis. Uh, and it can add, you know, centuries of life to the way the economy works when paper becomes irrelevant.
Right. And that's kind of what I like to talk about a little bit. When I look at crypto and I look at the economy, I try to make that connection. So, you're mentioning, right? So, at what point is this system going to continue to be acting like this? And on top of that, I think, and like you said, Zilliqa is trying to provide that opportunity for the centralized finance to thrive. And that means getting rid of the financial intermediaries, right? That third party overseeing a transaction or that third party getting in the middle of things. And to me, I think a lot of people are starting to realize due to the economic environment that, wait a minute, we, for the first time in history, at least in my eyes, we are seeing the escape or maybe the alternative into going to something that's more decentralized, that kind of gives power. And it's the democratization of finance, basically, like you say, right? And I see that as I see Zilliqa providing this solution. I see, basically the whole crypto space growing at a very rapid rate because it's offering that alternative. And now, a lot of people say, well, Bitcoin is going to be the killer of the US dollar. I don't think Bitcoin is going to eradicate the US dollar. I don't think that's how things work. And that's that, maximalist thinking that I still don't necessarily agree with. And I think instead of thinking of it that way, I think it's going to be the alternative. And that's similar to what you guys are doing too. And so that's kind of the connection I make. Crypto brings that solution, that alternative. The old financial system will still exist. However, it's going to be less relevant as more people and people realize the power that blockchain brings.
Yeah, so we're in a very interesting part of the world where people have been sending money back to their families for years and years and years and giving up quite a large chunk of it to the middlemen. And so now we have a technical way to exchange what we call stable coins. So that means the Singapore stablecoin XSGD, for example, and then the upcoming XIDR, the Indonesian rupee. So we can actually take one digital stablecoin and have someone exchange that for another digital stablecoin with very little friction and no middlemen. So someone based in Singapore can send their wages or some of that back to Indonesia, without having to pay a ridiculous amount of money for that transaction. So I'm quite sure that these models of transacting and moving money are so hyper efficient that they have to become dominant in the next 5 to 10 years.
Gotcha. Okay, that's some interesting thoughts. So, okay, another question I had, I see you and some of the people that I interview, I see them as entrepreneurs because you're taking part. I mean, you took part in the dot-com bubble, right? And you created businesses, you were in them, and now again, you're a pioneer in this new technological advancement. So, what do you recommend entrepreneurs today they should do? Or if you could provide some guidance as to hey, you're an entrepreneur, here's what I recommend you do or focus on, or maybe some tips, guidance, advice that you have on being an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I mean, this is the greatest time to be alive as an entrepreneur. I said when I joined the blockchain business, I wish I was 26 again because I felt completely empowered and unlimited in what could be created to the blockchain and into the cryptocurrency medium. And if you're a media guy, if you're an arts guy, if you're a music guy, there's something for you as well, right? You can see NFTs literally exploding right now. So anyone who's an artist can fairly quickly create a revenue for themselves by creating product and creating interesting NFTs and getting them on those platforms for auction or otherwise. We're looking at how that might protect rights for musicians, in terms of the big labels previously controlling everything. Now they can literally follow every single part of where their music is distributed and how they get paid back their royalties. So there's so many things in the media space. It's very exciting. In the sports arena, of course, we're very interested in the fantasy sports leagues and esports as well. We're looking at people creating careers as YouTube influencers. So we're supporting the X Academy product, which it's training people to be YouTube influencers. These are career changes, which are, I mean, you become an entrepreneur for yourself, right? You become your own sales guy, and you create this revenue stream from the work that you do. So X Academy is fascinating from that point of view. We're moving into an arena where people will be tokenizing themselves. So if you think about that process, obviously the MBA guy tried it, but didn't quite get there. But you can tokenize yourself. You can tokenize your future worth. You can unlock your own personal capital if people believe in you. So you can create a Carlos coin, and then if people believe in that and they want to get special access to your sort of pre-show or offcuts or whatever it is that you want to knock out there, then you have an immediate revenue stream which calculates automatically and through a smart contract pays you automatically. So the mechanisms for doing business are so radically different from anything I'd experienced before that it's immediate and it's instant and it's massively scalable. So as long as you have some value, you can trade it as a human, as an artist, as a creator, as a coder, definitely. If you're a trader, if you're a DeFi guy, if you understand all of the mechanisms in the financial markets, you can make a killing because you're monitoring all of these tokens, you're working out how to farm them, liquidity mine, yield farm, put those two together, and you've got kids, the degens or whatever, they're making thousands of dollars a day just by trading tokens. So this new entrepreneurial economy, it's a little bit specialist at the moment, but eventually education will catch up and people will literally ask their kids to go through this sort of cryptocurrency Chinese wall and work out how to make a living.
Yeah, that's that's incredibly interesting. Thinking that you can tokenize yourself. Yeah, I mean, I've never thought about it that way, and I think we're with this new technology coming up. I think, like you said, opportunities arise, and opportunities arise for not only traders but people that are looking to spread their content, NFTs, all of that. So I do agree with that. So. This conversation has been great, but we do have to wrap it up. But I have a few questions before we end this. Okay, so only one word description. When I first say, if I say Bitcoin, what would be your first word that comes into mind?
Freedom.
Okay. The economy.
Complex.
Okay. Um, Ethereum,
Grandfather.
Zilliqa.
New Age.
Okay. Um, Peter Schiff.
Oh, jewelry.
Okay, Joe. That's a pretty way to put him. All right. All right. And last question. I like how Anthony Pompliano does this. I'm sure you've heard of him. What are your what's some favorite books that you have that have or books or something that has changed your life or at least, favorite books that have given some value to you? Any ones that you got out there?
Oh, very early, creating value in a networked economy. That changed me dramatically a
Okay.
few years ago. I like Thomas Friedman's The Earth is Flat as well. That was a good one because you can tell my generation, right? And Free, Chris Anderson, that really spun me on my head and made me realize that you didn't have to be a wage slave. You're actually putting yourself out there for free could get you more money than getting a job.
Huh. Interesting. Yeah, one interesting book I'm reading is Psychology of Money. I highly recommend it for everyone. It's by Morgan Housel. But that's interesting. I might have to check those out. But anyway, all right, Colin, thanks for coming on the show. I really enjoyed this. Guys, check out Zilliqa. Okay, Zilliqa is, a pioneer right now in the blockchain technology. Watch this video, give it a few likes, subscribe, follow Colin Miles on Twitter. And I think we have a lot of opportunity coming for Zilliqa and the whole crypto space. But again, thank you, Colin, for joining the show.
Enjoyed it. Thanks very much.